right, it's 1:30. Good afternoon. Ms. Riggs, are all those present and accounted for the plaintiff?
They are, Your Honor.
Mr. Thompson and Mr. Cox, how about for the defendants?
Yes, Your Honor, we're ready to go. The legislative defendants are.
Yes, Your Honor, so are the state defendants.
All right, thank you. Then looks like everyone's here and we are ready to proceed. We will now officially be back on the record. Ms. Riggs, will you be calling the first witness for the plaintiff?
I will, Your Honor.
One thing before you do, the other judges and I conferred over lunch, and the defendant's objection to the plaintiff's calling witness Joel Ford is overruled. So you may call Mr. Ford, Ms. Riggs, when you have him subpoenaed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
If you are ready, you may call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Plaintiffs call Elizabeth Holmes, who should be in the waiting room right now.
That's a little loud. Try that. So how will I know when I'm on?
Your Honor, Elizabeth, is the court reporter going to swear in the witness? Or is someone going to swear in the witness?
Yes, I was just waiting.
Okay.
Ma'am, if you'll please raise your right hand.
Is that me?
Yes.
Am I supposed to have my license? Okay.
Ma'am, if you'll please raise your right hand.
Oh, excuse me.
Ms.
Your
Holmes,
Honor, Ms. Holmes is a bit hard of hearing, so if we could all speak up.
there's a little bit of feedback, Ms. Beal. I think maybe there's perhaps there's two microphones going on there. So I'll just swear in this first witness. Ms. Holmes, if you could please raise your right hand.
Okay.
Do you swear that the testimony you're going to give in this action is the truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Ms. Riggs, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mrs. Holmes. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Elizabeth Bowl Holmes.
Ms. Riggs, you're muted.
Sorry. Where do you live, Mrs. Holmes?
I live just outside of Wendell, North Carolina.
Are you married?
Yes.
To whom are you married?
I'm sorry?
To whom are you married?
Aaron Holmes, Jr.
And how long have you been married to Aaron?
46 years.
Do you have any children?
We have one.
What's your child's name?
Jabari Holmes.
How old is he?
He is 45.
What year was he born?
1975.
Is he your only child?
Yes.
Your Honors, I just want to, there is feedback. We think it might be the speakers we have set up to facilitate Mrs. Holmes' hearing. Is it bothering the court, or should we take a minute to try and address that issue?
It is somewhat distracting, and I imagine the court would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment and try to clear that up.
Okay, is it possible we could go into a breakout room just to figure out what's wrong with the speakers?
Sure. I actually think that it's the speakers that are causing the problem.
I think so too.
So
It
I
is
don't know if it's that quick of a fix, but if you could unplug those speakers, that might be a good start.
Talia,
Our paralegal is there trying to provide tech assistance.
I'll get her. Hold.
And Judge Poovey, this is Kelly Myers. If I launch the breakout sessions, it stops the live stream. So I can't launch breakout sessions in the middle of the trial.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Myers. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Riggs, we're just like in open court on the record, so if you can do what it is you need to do to try to fix that problem, that'd be great, but we'll forgive you for technical difficulty.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll move expeditiously to solve this problem. We're very much grateful for your patience.
Sure.
I do have a question, Ms. Holmes, on the spelling of your middle name. Is it Bowl or Ball?
I'm sorry.
Could you spell your middle name, please? You stated your name as Elizabeth Ball Holmes.
Yes, that's correct.
Is it B-A-L-L?
The middle name
Yes, ma'am.
is B-O-A-L.
B-O-A-L. Thank you.
That's my maiden name.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I have some headphones we're gonna try.
We can try it.
Okay. Thank you.
I think they were saying they wanted to try without speakers. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're gonna try.
It is sort of distorted.
Judge Poovey, do I have your permission not to put this on the record that they're speaking as they're addressing the speaker issue?
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
Talia, can you hear me in the headphones?
Yes, I can. Do you say something again? I just want to adjust the volume.
I can hear you, but will Mrs. Holmes' voice still be captured? I can barely hear you.
Did you say something one more time?
Testing, testing.
Okay. He's on. Allison is gonna talk to you.
Mrs. Holmes, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's fine. It's a little too loud, Talia. Can I do that?
Yes,
If
you
it's-
can.
That's lower and that's higher.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Talia. You can leave the room now. Thank you, Your Honors. I think we have solved our first technical challenge.
Okay, Ms. Fawcett, if you're ready to go back on the record, then Ms. Riggs, I think we're ready for you to proceed.
Thank you, Your Honors. Mrs. Holmes, are you currently employed?
No, I'm retired.
Okay. When did you retire?
2005.
From what work did you retire?
I did landscaping work for the City of Raleigh Parks Division.
And if you don't mind my asking, how old are you, Mrs. Holmes?
I'm 72.
Is your husband Aaron still working?
No, he retired.
And from what profession did he retire?
He was in the building trades, also with City of Raleigh Parks Division.
How old is Aaron?
Aaron is 85.
Mrs. Holmes, I'm going to show you a series of demonstrative photos and videos before I seek leave to put them on the screen. Have you reviewed the pictures and videos I'm about to show to you before your testimony today?
Yes.
And do you have personal knowledge of these photos and videos that I'm about to show you?
Yes.
Were you aware they were being taken?
Yes.
Your Honors, may I begin to publish a series of demonstratives to the witness and to the court?
Yes, and so I assume when you do this, that the legislative defendants know what you're about to do, and so, and this may be a good time to pause and just say that if legislative defendants, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Cox, if you all have any objection to that, then I just assume that you all would voice those objections. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you seen these exhibits when they're attempted to be shown to the court, and that you have no objection to their being published to the court prior to them being officially introduced into evidence.
Your Honor, Ms. Moss is going to handle this witness, but we will absolutely object to anything that we, have a problem with, and otherwise, we have no objection if we don't speak up.
Okay.
Your Honor, we shared these demonstratives in advance with defendants and legislative defendants.
That's
Mr.
right.
Cox,
We're
do
happy
you
to
have any-
abide by that instruction, Your Honor. We'll let the court know if we have any objections before the demonstratives get introduced.
Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Riggs, you may proceed. Yes.
Your Honor, would you like me to seek permission of the court before the publication of each demonstrative, or was that sufficient?
I think that's sufficient. No, you need not ask my permission each time.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, Ashley, you can go ahead and put that back up. Mrs. Holmes, I'm showing you a picture that's been marked PDX 2-2. Could you please tell the court who's in this picture?
The person in the wheelchair is Jabari. The man next to him is his father, Aaron, and of course behind him, myself.
Mrs. Holmes, was this picture taken recently?
Yes,
Mrs. Holmes, for the record, what is your race?
I am white or European American.
And what is your husband Aaron's race?
He is black or African American.
And what is Jabari's race?
He is both.
Could you please tell the court about Jabari's medical condition?
Yes, he was born with cerebral palsy. I guess you would call him paraplegic. He's unable to use his arms or legs purposefully. He moves them a lot, but he's not able to. The message doesn't get from the brain correctly to the muscles.
And aside from his cerebral palsy, does he have any other medical conditions?
He has severe scoliosis.
Is Jabari able to communicate with you?
Yes.
Mrs. Holmes, we're now going to display what has been marked as PDX 2-3. Can you describe to the court what is in the picture on the right?
It's called a communication board. It was developed by speech therapists. And did you want me to describe how it's used?
Yeah, how does Jabari use that?
The person talking to Jabari would be on one side of the board and Jabari be on the other. Basically, you follow his eye movements, and for each little square where there's a word, he'll look at that large square, and then he'll look at this is where it gets kind of hard to describe. It's two eye movements, one for the square that the word is in, and one to show you the position within that square.
And can you describe what is in the picture on the right in the on the left in the demonstrative?
That the chair, we call it his lounge chair. It just puts him in a more comfortable resting position.
When Jabari is in that chair, does he use the communications board?
Yes, he really needs to tell us something that he can't show us with his eye movements. We just have to get it and position ourselves where we can hold it, and then he can make full sentences, or at least short sentences.
Ms. Holmes, I'm now going to display a video that's been marked as PDX 2-4. As we're watching the video, can you tell the court what we're seeing?
Okay, Jabari is sitting at his computer and he's choosing, it's an eye gaze computer. He's choosing from the menu.
So what is an eye gaze? What is the eye gaze computer?
It's a computer that has a camera at the bottom, and once his head is stabilized, it can follow the movement of his eyes.
When did he get the eye gaze computer?
In his second to last year of high school.
Is the eye gaze computer portable?
No,
Mrs. Holmes, who takes care of Jabari?
I am his primary caregiver, and we have a person that helps us 6 days a week.
Is your husband able to help with Jabari's care right now?
He does still do certain things, but not as much.
Is your husband, can you tell the court briefly about your husband's current medical condition?
He has advanced stage emphysema.
What does that limit his ability to do?
Mainly any aerobic type movement, exercise. He can still walk and do some lifting, but he becomes winded very quickly.
Now, you mentioned a nurse that you have. What tasks specifically do you and your nurse help Jabari with?
The biggest help she is with the transfers. We have transferred Jabari a number of times every day.
Can you explain to the court what you mean by transfers?
Lifting from one chair to the bed, from the bed to the toilet, back to the bed, washing, dressing, and back in another chair.
Mrs. Holmes, I'm now going to display a video that's been marked as PDX 2-5. As we're watching the video, can you tell the court what we're seeing?
I'm giving him something to drink. And we use a squeeze bottle.
Is that how you have to hydrate Jabari?
Yes.
How often do you have to provide him hydration like that?
We do it mainly 2 times a day, but he can have, of course, drink whenever he wants it in between. But we try to give him a significant amount early in the day and then late afternoon, evening.
Does Jabari need assistance breathing?
No.
And you mentioned earlier that Jabari uses a wheelchair. Mrs. Holmes, I'm going to show you a picture that's been marked as PDX 2-6. Can you tell the court what we're looking at here in this picture?
Well, that is the back of Jabari's chair. He's at the computer, and that's the back of his chair.
Who is the other gentleman in the picture?
And that's his father, Aaron.
How much does Jabari's wheelchair weigh?
I believe the chair weighs about 40 to 50 pounds.
Is it motorized?
No.
Mrs. Holmes, I'm now going to play for you a video that's been marked PDX 2-7. As the video is playing, can you describe what's happening in the video?
It looks like I am getting him in position at his computer. And our house is fairly small, so there's a bit of maneuvering.
Mrs. Holmes, how much does Jabari weigh?
He weighs right at 100 pounds.
So how much does the chair and Jabari weigh together?
Close to 150.
And I'm sorry to ask you a sensitive question, but how much do you weigh?
I weigh 110 pounds.
Mrs. Holmes, I'd now like to show you another demonstrative picture marked PDX 2-8. What is this a picture of?
Well, of course, that's Jabari, and he is showing the straps that help hold him in the chair.
Okay, so what we see across Jabari's chest in this picture, is that attached to the wheelchair?
Yes,
And is that the wheelchair that Jabari currently uses?
yes.
Why are the straps necessary when Jabari's in the chair?
Yes.
Why?
He has to hold him up straight and to hold him in for safety, of course. But the straps and also the two pads under his arms stabilize his body.
Can these straps cause Jabari discomfort?
They can.
Why?
They're fairly tight, and when he has a lot of movement, he becomes fatigued and does have pain.
Are the straps ever a problem when you've had Jabari in the car?
I don't follow you.
I'm sorry, you talked about how the straps can sometimes cause Jabari pain. Has that ever happened when he's been in your car?
Occasionally, and you just have to stop and readjust them.
Okay, Ashley, you can take down that picture. Mrs. Holmes, you've mentioned you have a nurse to help with Jabari. How long have you had a nurse to help take care of him?
She's been with us 20 years.
What's her name?
Rosa.
How old is Rosa?
She is just turned 78.
Does health insurance pay for the nurse?
Yes, he has Medicaid and Medicare.
Mrs. Holmes, how frequently is Jabari able to get outside of your home?
Well, just going outside for a little bit, we do fairly often just to get him out for some fresh air, but going anywhere, he doesn't get to do much.
What are some of the reasons he leaves the house? And by that, I mean not just get fresh air, but actually leave the property.
What was the first part?
For what kinds of activities or does he leave the property?
Well, in the past year, just doctor's appointments.
How often does Jabari have doctor's appointments?
His primary care every 3 months, and his neurology specialist once or twice a year.
And you mentioned in the last year that's been what he's left the house for. Prior to that, would he ever leave the house for other occasions?
Yes, we used to have a person that came in the summertime and took him to movies and shopping and to some ball games and fun things.
How often would he get to leave the house for non-doctor's appointments?
Before this past year, he would go in the summertime, he would go 2 or 3 times a week.
And how long does summertime last when you're using that term?
Because the person was a teacher, it would be the summer break from his teaching, which was 6 to 8 weeks.
Why did that stop in the last year?
Mostly because of COVID, but also because the gentleman whose name is Raymond retired from teaching and has a new grandchild he's helping take care of.
How does Jabari travel when he leaves the house?
We have a handicap accessible van.
Mrs. Holmes, I'd now like to display to you a demonstrative marked PDX 2-9. Can you describe to the court what is depicted in these 3 pictures?
That's basically how we get Jabari from one place to the other. The ramp coming out of the house, and once we get the van out and open it up, we pull his chair up into it.
Now, when you say pull the chair up, what direction is Jabari facing as you get him into the van?
He's facing outwards.
And then how does he get up the ramp into the car?
I pull him up there.
And then once he's in the van, do you have to do anything else?
Yes, there's 4 straps that you have to attach and tighten to secure the chair.
Ashley, you can take down that picture. Mrs. Holmes, do you yourself take Jabari on the trips to the doctor that you mentioned?
Yes.
Is Jabari's nurse able to help take him to the doctor's office?
She has in the past, but recently I do it myself.
How long does it take you to get Jabari in and out of the car, regardless of where you're going?
15 minutes, I would say, to get him from the house into the vehicle and secured.
How long does it take? I'm sorry, strike that. Does Rosa help you get him into the car?
She gets him out to the car, and then I do the rest.
When you go to the doctor's office and arrive there, who helps you get Jabari in and out of the car?
No one.
You mentioned a gentleman named Raymond who was a family friend that took Jabari to the movies. How old is Raymond?
He is 67.
When Raymond has taken Jabari out, do you go with them?
No.
Why not?
That's part of the fun, is going without your mom.
Why has it been important for Jabari to go on those trips?
Just having the camaraderie of another guy and doing fun things.
Do you pay, or prior to this past year, did you pay Raymond to take Jabari on trips during the summer?
Yes.
How much would you pay him?
I was paying him $300 a week.
Do you have any understanding of whether Raymond will be able to resume those trips at any point in the future?
I don't know.
Mrs. Holmes, you mentioned, I'm sorry, did I interrupt? Okay. Mrs. Holmes, you mentioned you live in Wendell. Where is Wendell located? In which county?
Wake.
And in which part of Wake County?
The eastern part.
Okay. Mrs. Holmes, we're gonna put up an exhibit, a demonstrative marked PDX 2-10. Can you tell the court what this is a picture of?
That is our driveway coming through.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a video, but keep going.
Yeah, it's our driveway coming up through the woods to our house.
How would you characterize the kind of area in which you live?
It is rural.
How long have you lived here?
42 or 3 years.
Thank you, Ashley. You can take that down. Mrs. Holmes, where is Jabari's primary care doctor?
In Wake Forest.
How long does it take you to get him there from door to door each way?
Half an hour at best. We try to allow 40, 45 minutes.
And where is Jabari's neurologist?
Chapel Hill.
How long does it take to get there?
An hour.
During these trips in the car, does Jabari ever experience discomfort?
Not usually in the vehicle. A lot of times, especially going to Chapel Hill, sometimes he'll go to sleep.
Okay. Have you ever had to stop the car because his straps were bothering him on his wheelchair?
Occasionally.
Mrs. Holmes, did Jabari attend school growing up?
Yes, he did.
Where did he go to school?
He went to, he finished school at Millbrook High School.
Mrs. Holmes, we're just going to put up an exhibit marked PDX 2-11. Can you tell the court what these are pictures of?
Those are pictures that I took in our yard after graduation. The pictures they got at school weren't very good. He was awfully tight and excited, but I got him to relax a little more.
Okay. Ashley, you can take that down. Now, Mrs. Holmes, I'd like to talk to you a bit about Jabari's day-to-day life. And we're going to display a demonstrative picture marked PDX 2-12. It's a panoramic picture. Can you describe to the court what we're looking at in this picture?
That's our living room, and Jabari is at his computer on the left, and the television is right there, sort of in the middle.
What's to the right?
The fish tank and his other chair over on the far right.
Does Jabari watch TV during the day?
Yes.
How many hours a day does Jabari spend in this position, where he's located in this picture?
At least 4 hours, sometimes 6.
Does Jabari follow the news and current events?
Yes, very much.
What does he like to watch?
He watches CNN a lot, and then he watches other programming too.
Mrs. Holmes, I'm going to display a demonstrative marked PDX 2-13 that's very similar to what we just looked at, but it zooms in on some numbers at the top of the room. Can you explain to the court what are those numbers?
When Jabari's not at his computer, he has the numbers around the room, so he can tell us, well, anything numerical, but especially he can tell us what channel to go to.
Thank you, Ashley. You can take that down. Mrs. Holmes, has Jabari voted in elections before?
Yes,
How many?
I'm not sure exactly how many, but he tries to go every time.
Do you remember about when Jabari first started voting, how old he was?
I think he voted as soon as he was able to, the first 18, I believe, when you can first vote.
What method does Jabari usually use when he votes?
We go to our polling place
Do you go on election day or during early voting?
on election day.
Where is your polling place?
It's at East Wake High School.
How far away is that from your house?
I think about 2.5 miles.
How long does that take to drive?
Oh, just a few minutes, 10 minutes.
Is voting in person important to Jabari?
Yes,
Why?
it's just, he feels like that's really voting.
How is it important to Jabari that he votes?
Very much.
Why?
It's for him as well as a lot of people, it's his only way of voicing his opinion in our government.
Mrs. Holmes, I now want to display a demonstrative video for you in the court. It's marked PDX 2-14, and after the video plays, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
Is voting important to you?
Hell yes, it is. Hell yes, it is. I love to vote with my heart. I love to vote with my heart.
Mrs. Holmes, can you briefly recap what we just saw in that video?
Was Jabari answering the question, does he like to vote?
Mrs. Holmes, since Jabari first became eligible to vote, how does what we just heard in that video compare to how Jabari has felt about voting historically?
That pretty much says it all, that little clip there.
Why does Jabari keep his voting stickers?
He's very proud of it.
Is it important for you to help Jabari vote?
Yes.
Why?
Because it is something he wants to do very much, and I think it's important for all of us.
Mrs. Holmes, we're going to put up a demonstrative marked PDX 2-15. Have you reviewed this demonstrative before?
Yes.
Did you create it?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Did you make it?
No.
Does it accurately reflect where you live vis-a-vis your election day polling place?
Yes.
In the drive from your home to your election day polling place, can you tell me what kind of traffic you would typically encounter?
Very,
I'm sorry?
very little traffic.
About how long, I'm sorry, I think I asked you this, about how long does it take to make that drive?
Just a few minutes, 5 to 10.
And did you take Jabari to vote last year in the November 2020 election?
Yes,
Did you take him to your election day precinct?
yes.
Thank you, Ashley. You can take that down. Mrs. Holmes, briefly before we go into your experience trying to get Jabari a photo ID, can you tell the court what kinds of identification does Jabari have?
He has his high school ID, picture ID.
What other kinds of ID, whether it has picture on it or not?
Just his Medicare and Medicaid cards, his voter registration card.
How old is his high school photo identification card?
It's made in 97.
How did you first learn that Jabari would require a photo ID to vote?
After they passed the law.
Let me first ask you about the previous law. If I refer to the previous voter ID law as House Bill 589, will you know what I'm referring to?
Yes, that's the one that came in 2013.
Yeah, well, I can't answer your questions, but let's first talk about the first time that you found out that Jabari might need a photo ID to vote. Was that after the enactment of House Bill 589?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you learn that Jabari would need a photo ID to vote?
Well, through news and television first.
Then what?
And then we got a mailing from the Board of Elections. And it was very concise. It was a small card that told exactly what you needed to, if you didn't have ID and you wanted to get one, what you would need.
Do you recall specifically what that mailer told you you would need in order to get Jabari a photo ID?
It gave several things: birth certificate, social security number, and several other things.
Do you recall whether it's said you needed a copy of Jabari's social security card?
It didn't say that. It said social security number.
Do you have a copy of Jabari's social security card?
No.
Do you know Jabari's social security number, but you don't have to tell us?
Yes, I do.
So after getting that mailing, what did you do next?
I called the motor vehicles office in Wendell and found out I could make an appointment to get a card. And so I did make an appointment.
Do you remember approximately when you made this appointment?
It was that same year. I can't remember exactly, after we knew for sure he was going to have it.
Okay. Was it before the March 2016 primary election?
Yes.
What documents did you bring with you to your appointment at the DMV?
I had his birth certificate, I had his social security number. I had his Medicare and Medicaid cards and voter registration and several other things.
What happened at the appointment at the DMV?
We're able to see someone fairly quickly, and she looked at what I had and she said, I need a social security card. And I told her that I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find it, but this was his number. And she said, you can't do it.
Okay. What did you do after you were informed that you couldn't get Jabari an ID without his social security card?
I called the Social Security office in Raleigh, and when I finally got somebody, I asked him what would I need to do to get him a card, a replacement card. And she said to mail her or mail them his Medicaid card. And so I did.
How did you get them his Medicaid card?
I mailed it to them.
Did you include a note?
Yes.
How did you produce the note?
I wrote it.
By hand?
Yes.
So what happened after you mailed what happened after you mailed Jabari's Medicaid card to the Social Security office?
In about a week or so, I got a letter back with the card, thank goodness. And it explained that because I was asking for it and Jabari wasn't asking for it, I guess, that I would need to send my driver's license.
Did you do that?
No, I am not sending my driver's license through the mail or any other place.
Did you follow up with the Social Security office after you understood them to tell you to be mailing your driver's license to them?
No, it was my intention to continue, but for one thing, I was exhausted of this subject, and sometime in there, someone got in touch with me about possibly doing something different.
How long would you estimate you spent trying to get Jabari a photo ID?
Probably 10 to 15 hours if you include searching my entire house and taking him down there, making an appointment, talking to Social Security, sending things, and so forth.
So just to confirm, despite your efforts, you've still not been able to get a photo ID for Jabari?
No.
Turning now to another topic, did Jabari try to vote in the March 2016 primary election?
Yes.
What happened at that when you went to vote?
We had to go to, after we went to the first station, and we didn't have the ID. They sent us to another table, and I talked to first one person who pretty much just told us that he couldn't vote, and something about going to the the office downtown for elections.
Okay, so first of all, where did you go to vote that day?
We went to East Wake School.
And who all went?
Myself, my husband, and Jabari.
Did you expect, when you first arrived, that you would be asked for photo ID for Jabari?
Yes.
So I want to ask you a few more questions. You went then to a separate table. Tell me about your interaction with the first person you met at that separate table.
Well, it wasn't that she was impolite or mean, but she pretty much told us that he couldn't vote. And like I said, something about going downtown to the, what am I trying to say? The Board of Elections. Uh, and I showed her some documents. I explained to her about trying to get the ID. And I showed her some documents, and then she became somewhat impatient and told me she just couldn't help me.
Was Jabari with you when you were having this conversation with the first poll worker?
Yes.
Could you tell the effect that the conversation was having on Jabari?
Yes.
How?
Well, his body got rigid, and his head movements uh, let me know he was upset. And
what happens to Jabari's muscles when he gets upset?
he gets real tight, and that's when he can cause himself pain, and certainly a good bit of discomfort.
Has he ever had any even more serious medical complications from getting very upset?
Yes, he has a history of seizures.
What about what the first poll worker was talking to you about was making Jabari upset? Could you tell?
Yes, because we had understood that you would be able to vote some type of alternate provisional ballot, I believe it's called. And she wasn't offering this.
You mentioned you tried to show her some documents. What documents did you take with you to vote during the March 2016 primary election?
The same things I had taken to the motor vehicles, his birth certificate, his Medicare, Medicaid card, his voter registration card. What good are they? I'm sorry.
Did you take Jabari's high school photo ID?
Yes.
Did the poll worker look at any of the documents you handed the poll worker?
No.
After this interaction with the first poll worker, then what happened?
There was another gentleman at the end of a long table who had begun to listen, and I think he could tell that I was getting upset, and he asked me to come over to his part, so we went over there, and he said, "You can vote a provisional ballot," and I said, "Well, then am I going to have to take it to the Board of Elections or downtown or some other?" And he said, "No, we'll make sure that it gets to where it needs to go."
Did you have any sense from that conversation whether or not Jabari's provisional vote would count?
No, that gentleman being very nice and saying that he would do his best to get it where it needed to go.
Did you worry that Jabari's vote might not count if you didn't go down to the Board of Elections yourself?
Objection, leading.
Your Honor, just trying to lay the foundation. I can rephrase if you'd like.
Give me just 1 second. The objection's overruled. Thank you.
You can answer, Mrs. Holmes.
Okay, repeat.
Did you worry that Jabari's provisional ballot might not count if you didn't go down to the County Board of Elections?
Oh, yes.
Why is that?
Because I was getting two different stories right there.
Do you recall if you filled out a declaration on behalf of Jabari that said he had a reasonable impediment that prevented him from obtaining a picture ID?
I'm not totally sure, but I think I did sign something.
What happened after you got the provisional did you get the provisional ballot then from that table?
Yes.
What happened after that?
Well, we went and over to an area we could, where we could fill it out. And we went through our usual process. I always read out each one and Jabari tells me what to vote. And then we gave it back to the gentleman and he put it in an envelope right there while we were there and repeated that he would see that it got to where it needed to go.
Okay. Walking out of the polling place that day, did you believe that Jabari's provisional vote would count?
I'm not sure what I believed.
Door to door, how long did it take Jabari to vote in the March 2016 primary election?
You mean the door at the polling place?
All right, let's start from walking in the door of the polling place to leaving the door at the polling place. How long did it take Jabari to vote that day?
At least a half hour, probably 45 minutes.
And including travel time, how long did it take Jabari to vote that day?
Oh, at least an hour.
When you and Jabari go to vote at your election day precinct and photo ID is not required, how long does it take to vote under those circumstances?
10 to 15 minutes.
How did the whole experience of voting in the March 2016 primary election make you feel?
Just bad. Disappointed.
Why?
Because it's something Jabari really looks forward to, and we had tried to do everything we could do.
Are you aware of any places for Jabari to obtain an allegedly free photo ID under the new voter ID law?
I think there's a new place on New Hope Road.
Okay.
Or close to New Hope Road.
Okay, Ashley, can you put up, and Mrs. Holmes, I'm going to display to you what we've marked as PDX 2-16. Mrs. Holmes, have you seen this demonstrative before?
Yes.
Can you tell me what you know about where the new County Board of Elections office is on this map?
It looks like it is close to the intersection of New Hope and 64 East or New Bern Avenue.
Can you tell me what it's like driving around that part of Raleigh from a traffic perspective?
It's pretty congested.
How would you drive from your house to the County Board of Elections on New Hope?
I've never been there, but if it's where I think it is, I would go from our house up Buffalo Road and then turn on New Hope, get there that way.
If it were shorter, would you take New Bern Avenue to get there?
No, I don't. New Bern is pretty congested.
Okay. Ashley, you can take that down. Mrs. Holmes, are you worried that trying to get Jabari an ID from the County Board of Elections would still be problematic?
I don't know what it would be, but
would it be a fun trip for Jabari to make?
no,
Why not?
Well, it's, just filling out paperwork and it just frustrating because of the whole process.
Would it be a burden to take him to the County Board of Elections office?
Yeah. Yes, I mean,
If Raymond is able to resume trips with Jabari, could Raymond take Jabari to the County Board of Elections?
he could.
Would you have to pay him to do that?
Well, yes, I always pay him.
If Raymond isn't able to resume taking Jabari after COVID lightens up, do you have anyone else lined up who could take Jabari on that trip?
No. My sister helps me, but I reserve her help for really important, emergency type things.
Would you have to take him then entirely on your own?
Yes.
Mrs. Holmes, do you have financial concerns for your family?
Yes. It's not that we do without anything, and I'm grateful for that. But every little bit of extra money we have, we try to keep it in savings to augment the care that Jabari needs now and is going to need in the future.
Are you careful about your spending?
Yes,
Why is that?
for the same reason, because we need to conserve our resources for his care.
Do you worry about what may happen to Jabari in the future when you're unable to care for him?
Very much.
Why?
There is very little choice of what happens to someone like Jabari when he no longer has family.
Do you think, do you intend to keep honoring Jabari's wishes to vote in person, Mrs. Holmes?
Yes, as best I can.
Why do you plan to keep taking him to vote?
Because that is what he wants, and it is a good experience for him. And because even though I tried to get him to vote absentee ballot this past time, I understand that in the future, he may still need an ID for that.
What do you understand it brings to Jabari's life when you take him to vote in person?
It's just it's a feeling of belonging to a community, to being involved.
What do you think about the requirement that all voters who want to vote should have to show a photo ID?
I think if there was a real reason for it, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Also, if someone had planned a way to make this easy for people like Jabari, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Given your experiences, has that been the case?
So, repeat.
Given your experiences with Jabari, has it been the case that they've made it easy for you and him?
No.
Mrs. Holmes, no further questions. I'll pass the witness and just ask counsel to speak up, please, if you can. Mrs. Holmes may have trouble hearing.
Thank you. Ms. Moss, cross-examination.
Yes, if it pleases the court. Mrs. Holmes, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay. It's nice to see you again. We met about 2 years ago when I took your deposition. But for the record, my name is Nicole Moss, and I'm one of the attorneys representing the legislative defendants today. I want to turn your attention or ask you some questions about the free voter ID that's available at the County Board of Elections. You do understand that the law that your son is challenging as a plaintiff in this case does provide free IDs at the county boards of election, correct?
yes,
And you understand that you would not be required to present any documentation such as the Social Security card that you've been unable to obtain. Isn't that right?
yes,
And you've already testified that you know your son's Social Security number, so you could provide the last 4 of his Social Security number to the County Board of Elections, right?
yes,
And you certainly know his birth date, I assume.
yes.
Understanding that there may be some additional traffic between your house and the County Board of Elections, have you, apart from that, do you have any concerns about whether there is handicap parking available at that location?
No,
And you understand that the building is handicap accessible, isn't that right?
I would assume it is.
And given its distance from your house, it would take approximately 20 minutes by car, give or take, isn't that right?
Yes,
And the amount of time that it takes to put Jabari into the van to transport him somewhere, that amount of time is the same whether you're driving 5 or 10 minutes down the road or whether you're driving 20 minutes down the road. Isn't that right?
yes,
When we last spoke at your deposition, Mrs. Holmes, that was in 2019, and I asked you at the time whether you intended to have what you described as your family friend, Raymond, take Jabari on outings that summer, so the summer of 2019. Did you follow through on your intention? Did, in fact, Raymond take Jabari out on outings in the summer of 2019?
yes.
Approximately how many outings per week in the summer of 2019 did Jabari go on with Raymond?
He usually went 2 or 3 times a week.
And during that time, did you discuss with Raymond at all the possibility of taking Jabari to the County Board of Elections to get Jabari one of the free ID cards that was being offered during that period of time?
No,
And there was no reason why your family friend Raymond could not have taken Jabari to the County Board of Elections that summer, isn't that right?
I repeat that.
There was no reason why Raymond could not have taken Jabari to the County Board of Elections to obtain a free ID in the summer of 2019. Isn't that right?
You mean, was he physically able to take him?
Correct.
Yes, he was physically able to.
And he was able to put Jabari in and out of the van that you have available to transport your son.
Yes,
And you were paying him $300 a week to take Jabari places that summer.
yes,
And as far as you know, the County Board of Elections was offering the free IDs during that period of time.
at that time, I didn't know about the other, I didn't know all the details about the other, place, this new place.
Okay. You were aware as of your deposition that the location had moved to New Hope Road, correct?
I didn't know, I thought it was in North Raleigh. I didn't know the details of where it was.
But you certainly would have been capable of looking up the address and determining where it was located.
I could have.
And if you had any questions or concerns about whether it was handicap accessible, you could have called on the phone and asked those questions of the County Board of Elections, couldn't you?
Sure. Yes.
I want to turn your attention for a moment to the March 2016 primary and the experience that you and Jabari had. First, could you clarify for me, because it wasn't clear to me from the direct questioning, did Jabari in fact have a seizure while he was voting that summer? I'm sorry, in that election?
No.
And your son was able to vote a provisional ballot accompanied by a reasonable declaration form in that election, correct?
Yes.
And his vote was counted, correct?
Yeah, I found that out later. Yes.
But you don't dispute his vote was counted?
No, I don't dispute.
And you have no particular insight or knowledge about what the training or instructions will be for poll workers should the photo ID law that is being challenged in this lawsuit is allowed to be put in place. Isn't that right?
No, repeat.
Sure. You don't have any particular insight or knowledge about how the photo ID law that's being challenged in this lawsuit is going to be implemented at your polling place, should the law be allowed to go into place.
And I have no idea.
Okay. But certainly you and your son are aware that he has the right to vote a provisional ballot accompanied by a reasonable impediment declaration, because he's done that previously, correct?
Yes.
And it would continue to be the case that you could truthfully say on that declaration that Jabari has a disability that prevents him from presenting an ID at the polling place. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And you could say that truthfully and have no concern that someone would say that is a false statement, that your son is not disabled.
I don't think they would.
And you talked a little bit with Ms. Riggs about absentee voting, absentee by mail voting. You understand that is an option that is available to you and your son.
Yes.
And understanding that your son's preference is to vote in person, if it were too difficult for you to transport him to the polling site, he could still vote using absentee by mail voting, correct?
Yes.
If you determined that it would be too difficult for Jabari or had concerns about his comfort or safety voting in person, he could vote using absentee by mail, correct?
Yes.
You also indicated on direct that you stopped attempting to get an ID for Jabari, and I believe what you said is someone got in touch with you about doing something different. What were you referring to?
This whole idea of the suit.
Okay. So your attempts to get an ID for Jabari stopped when he became involved in this lawsuit?
Yes.
If I could just have one moment, I believe that may be all. Mrs. Holmes, I appreciate your time today, and I don't have any other further questions for you.
Thank you. Mr. Cox, do you have any cross-examination questions?
No, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Holmes. We have no questions.
I'll redirect Ms. Riggs.
Just briefly, thank you, Honor. Mrs. Holmes, on cross-examination, Ms. Moss asked you about how long it would take to get to the new County Board of Elections, and you said approximately 20 minutes by car. Do you remember that?
Yes.
How long would that trip take, including getting Jabari in and out of the car at your house, at the County Board of Elections office, and then back at your house?
A better part of an hour.
And you would have had, in the summer of 2019, would you have had to pay your family friend Raymond to take Jabari to the County Board of Elections to get a quote unquote free ID?
Yeah. Yes, I pay Raymond for all the work he does with Jabari.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. I have no further questions.
Are there any recross-examination questions, Ms. Moss or Mr. Cox?
No, Your Honor. None for the legislative defendants.
None from us, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Holmes, if you were on the witness stand right now, I would say to you, you may step down, ma'am. So thank you very much for your participation. Ms. Riggs, would now be a good time for us to go ahead and take an afternoon break. I try not to stay in the courtroom for more than about an hour and a half at a time. I mentioned that earlier. It's now been almost an hour and a half, but if now would be a good time for us to take our afternoon break, I'll be glad to go ahead and do that.
Yes, Your Honor. I think before we call our next witness, that'd be timely.
Okay, great. Then it's 2:47 according to the clock on my computer here. So let's break until 3 o'clock. Come back at 3 o'clock. Thank you.